Ever since the Nintendo Switch's online service was launched, it's been met with universal praise from fans and critics alike. It's just a shame that the type of praise it's receiving is for being something that's enjoyable to poop on. And as many of you already know, the reason why everyone's duking all over the service is because Nintendo's charging money for a subpar experience that until now they've always offered for free. And instead of using that money to make the online play with the Switch, well, playable, the above-average sized N instead thought it'd be best to give us a handful of games they had laying around. Which doesn't sound that bad since some of these games are the greatest ever made. But not only have they insisted that they're only going to be focusing on releasing NES games, despite the Wii offering 64 games on day one 13 years ago, they've been sprinkling these NES games out at a rate that's slower than a turtle wiping its ass, with about 2 to 3 games per month depending on which country you live in. And as if that wasn't bad enough, it's not even like you get to keep these games on your Switch forever. You can only play them temporarily until the day Nintendo decides they don't want you to anymore.
I don't want to rent, I want to own.
Then go get a job.
But as stubborn as Nintendo's always known to be about doubling down on bad ideas, even they can't ignore how frustrated the fan base is getting over all this malarkey. And if the rumors are true, then it looks like N-Dog's gonna try to fan the fires by adding Super Nintendo games to the service to entice more people into forking up cash. But if you ask my sleep-deprived candy ass, adding SNES games doesn't address the real problem with the service, and it's no better than putting a band-aid on a severed body part. Why is that, you ask? Well, make yourselves comfortable, don't answer phone calls from this number under any circumstances whatsoever, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the king of all that is fun, Cameron, to tell you why Nintendo's online service is still gonna suck with Super Nintendo games, and what they can do to make everything better. In the age of the internet, fans can definitely be demanding from time to time, and even a little ungrateful. For instance, I think Smash Ultimate went above and beyond for a game that was made in like 20 minutes. However, despite all the work that went into the game, there's still a good chunk of people out there who are genuinely pissed off over petty issues like certain characters only being assist trophies. However, when it comes to complaints about the Switch's online service, just about every bad thing that's ever been said is absolutely true, as I mentioned earlier. And this would be understandable if online gaming hadn't already been a thing on consoles for like 67 years. But if Nintendo would just copy the bare-ass basics of what the competition's doing, then paying $20 a year really wouldn't be a big deal. After all, it's hardly even noticeable if you could afford a Switch in the first place. But Nintendo's not really charging for their online service. They're just forcing us to buy NES games for the 47th time. It'd be like buying tickets to a theme park and then being forced to pay $20 extra for a Super Fun Pass, which lets you ride the bonus bumper cars and grants access to the bathrooms that have no toilet paper and shit-stained seats. I do think NES games would have been a great bonus if improving the online play and adding dedicated servers had been the focus, but at the rate the games are being released, it's just a step backwards from what the Virtual Console used to be. I wouldn't even mind if the online play was still shitty as long as it was a little bit better than before. I mean, if I could see N-Dogs making improvements and trying to get better, I can give him a little wiggle room. But if you've tried playing even just NES games online, let alone Splatoon or Smash, then you're probably well aware that the lag will give you Hell Week all rolled into one night more often than not. And for the record, my internet connection's just fine. I made a video in the past about how Nintendo's online service will be good eventually, and I still stand by it, but it may be a while before that finally happens. And even though Super Nintendo games are great and all, Nintendo's ignoring the main problem at hand if that really does turn out to be their solution. Because it'd be like people getting mad about that $20 Super Fun Pass for the amusement park, and instead of cleaning the shitty bathrooms up, they just add an extra bonus ride. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying NES or Super Nintendo games are bad. They're just nothing to get excited about in 2019, especially random-ass games like tennis. And when everyone knows it doesn't take Nintendo any effort to give us these games, while Sony and Microsoft are offering much better free games every month that we get to keep on our consoles with their services, not to mention a higher quantity of them as well, then it just drives the point home that Nintendo clearly has no idea what they're doing and are too stubborn to just take advice from somebody else. I don't know what Nintendo's long-term plan is, but if I had to guess, I'd say they're probably thinking about how Sony and Microsoft give free games away every month with their services, and figured that NES and possibly Super Nintendo games would suffice for now. After all, $20 versus $60 makes it reasonable to offer Super Nintendo and NES games. But when games from the 64 and beyond start coming out, I wouldn't be surprised if they increase the price or add more expensive tiers. And given the fact that Nintendo seems to absolutely refuse allowing GameCube games on the Switch, I'd say this is probably in the cards. Otherwise, why not port Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD from the Wii U? Or at the very least, why not Luigi's Mansion? I mean, it came out for the 3DS while the Switch was a year and a half old. So Nintendo definitely left it off consciously. And the only reason I can think of as to why they do that is because GameCube games are going to come to the Switch under the same format as the NES. But I do think distributing old games this way is an awesome format to have as an option, since it means you can play multiplayer with older games without Nintendo or third parties having to remake them. You just load the the app up, pick a game, and connect with a friend. So if Nintendo took the same approach for other consoles, then I think it'd be great. But to not even give us the option to buy individual games that we could permanently own on the Switch is just leaving money on the table. I wouldn't mind paying an annual fee for classic games like Xbox's Game Pass does. I just don't like that Nintendo's locking their shitty online service behind it. I mean, the current format's a nice way to try new games you might not have been willing to pay for, if you've never heard of emulators somehow anyway. But I don't see why we can't just download the NES app for free without subscribing to the online service and just buy whatever games we wanted. I know $20 a year would probably be a better deal once they add more games, but for $20 a year, I'm sure we're probably not going to get most third-party games for a long time, if ever at all. After all, the more games that are on there, the more the pie has to be divided up between all the developers. So it does make sense why we're only getting a couple games every month. But I honestly believe that there can't be more than like 4 people out there who are buying Switch Online just to play NES games. Especially since we just got the NES Classic Edition, cause let's be real, most of us hacked them. But even if you didn't, $20 a year solely for the NES games that are being offered right now is hardly worth it. And Nintendo's tactics just remind me of this one time that a Girl Scout kidnapped my dumbass dad and demanded that I buy cookies in order to save him. That little girl wasn't selling me cookies, she was selling me my father's freedom under the guise of Thin Mints. Although, to be fair, the only reason I actually committed to that sale was just for the cookies. But my point is that people just want to play Nintendo games online, and Nintendo's holding that privilege hostage with a ransom demanding that we buy NES games. But they're completely blowing it if they don't prioritize getting dedicated servers and without using our cell phones as a middleman for voice chat. Everything would be amazing even if they just half-ass copy Sony and Microsoft, but of course, Nintendo always has to be innovative out of pure stubbornness and just can't admit when somebody else thought of a good idea. It'd be like starting a new car company but using square tires just because no one did it before. Like I said before, I still believe that Nintendo's online service is going to be awesome at some point in the future, but in order for that to happen, we all need to keep rubbing their nose in the mess they made, which is really the whole point of this video, and it brings me great joy to see the dislikes being spammed on any of their videos that have to do with the online service. Like many of you, it's actually the only reason I click on them. But if they think Super Nintendo games are going to fix the problem of having terrible online play, then it looks like we've got some work left to do to make sure Nintendo realizes their service isn't good enough. Even though Super Nintendo games certainly are nice and offer better multiplayer games than the NES, it's a baby step in the right direction by letting us know they're trying. But the bottom line is that Super Nintendo ROMs aren't going to fix shitty online play. If Nintendo doesn't want to listen to me though, then they should ask our lovely patrons over at Patreon, who are clearly geniuses as well as sexy beasts. And if you want to join that club for loot boxes and wacky Polaroids in the mail, then feel free to do so to have your name featured at the end of every video. Or maybe consider picking a t-shirt or coffee mug up. And if you send us pictures or videos of you rocking any of our merch at all, then we'll put them in our videos as well, just like this badass right here. What do you think it'll take to fix the Switch's online service though? Are Super Nintendo games enough for you? Would 64 and GameCube do it? Or should Nintendo stop worrying about bonuses and spend this money on dedicated servers? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining or intriguing. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already if you're a mega badass who likes being pandered to and end slates. And if you really want to go the extra mile, then liking and sharing this video really does go a long way. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.